Now I give the word to Stijn for the webinar.
Yeah. So good morning once again, and very welcome to the second webinar in our Fair Focus series. Just for your information, we had the first one last Tuesday presented by Barbara about the value added of clean sourcing for your company. And next week, there's 2 more webinars to follow. The first one on Tuesday next week is about how you can show your customers you care by sharing your sustainable story, and also the why and how of certification and licensing tools on Thursday. So very welcome to join these webinars. If you have a doubt or if you still want to subscribe, don't hesitate to contact us. So first of all, so this webinar is about how Fairtrade can meet your sustainability goals, and how can we better explain this, illustrate this with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, launched in 2015, and is a shared call to action for everybody in the world, for all organizations, for all people. And the reason why we chose this as a central theme for this webinar is that they cover almost all aspects of sustainability, and everybody knows them. To start with, and also that gives people maybe time to plug in still the coming minutes. We start with a video of I think a few minutes that explains already quite a lot how Fairtrade is linked with, strongly connected with these sustainable development goals.
If you ask a coffee grower that I met in Costa Rica 2 years ago, he told me, I don't want my kids to be farmers. I want my kids to be doctors. I want my kids to be lawyers. Why? Because there's no future in farming. You know, every day I get less and less for my coffee. So that's what is at stake.
Je l'ai dit chaque jour, étudiez bien à l'école pour aller devant. Parce que cacao, on produit le cacao, mais il n'y a rien dedans. Cette année, cacao, il n'a pas payé, l'argent n'est pas beaucoup. Si tu as 4 enfants, 5 enfants, il n'y a pas plus d'argent pour qu'il avance devant.
Fairtrade is just fighting for justice in trade, respect of human rights, and better condition for farmers. This is what we are talking about. We are not asking for aid. Is that just justice for what they are doing? Because we think that justice in trade is the beginning of development. This is what we think.
The United Nations General Assembly was the scene of a celebration in 2015. When 193 member countries adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, a unanimous commitment to end poverty, fight inequality, and tackle climate change.
So the Sustainable Development Goals are a plan. The Sustainable Development Goals cover all areas of life for people and for planet. They cover education, gender equality, nutrition, they cover climate action, they cover sustainable consumption. Also fair trade is part of the goals.
To me, the core of the SDGs and what fair trade really is aiming to do is end all poverty, particularly poverty on the farmers and workers' sides.
Fairtrade is different from other markets. As much as they pay for their flowers, there's an extra coin going to employees and changing the lives of workers.
We are the one who manages the premium. How do we use this premium? And as we use the premium, does it have an impact?
La prime, elle est reversée directement à la coopérative. Et c'est ensemble, la coopérative et ses membres, qui décident de ce qu'ils veulent faire avec la prime. Quand on reverse une partie de la prime aux producteurs, Ça lui permet déjà de nourrir sa famille ou bien mettre une toiture sur sa maison, et ça permet aussi de lutter aussi contre la pauvreté. Au niveau de la lutte contre le travail des enfants, avec la prime, ça nous a permis de construire une école qui permet que les enfants partent à l'école.
For Côte d'Ivoire alone, we have 255 producer organizations which are Fairtrade certified. Unfortunately, they are only selling 15% of their beans under Fairtrade terms. It means that if they are able to sell more, it will bring more benefits to their community. Unfortunately, yet it's not the case. So my appeal is that consumers, partners work toward this living income and make sure that others will understand how it's important for farmers to earn more to be able to have a future.
The people who drafted the SDGs were very conscious that it's not an effort only for the UN. It's an effort for all of us.
So, yes, let's continue, and I hope everybody's on board now already. But before continuing with our connection and to the SDGs, I want to share with you a slide that is essential to understand our system, the fair trade system, how we operate. On the blue side, you see below and as start of the supply chain, of course, the farmers, the producers, and sometimes also the local exporter. And it is important to say that that they are supported in all what they are doing by our producer networks. We have producer networks in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, and they are locally represented to support farmers on certification, on organizational strengthening, on agriculture techniques. But also important to mention is that these producer networks that represent the farmers, they are also part of the General Assembly of Fairtrade International, and they even have 50% of the votes. So everything what we are doing as Fairtrade system, everything has a buy-in from the farmers. On the right side in green, you see the national fair trade organizations, such as Fairtrade Belgium. And we work together with importers, manufacturers, retailers, in order to convince them to have more fair trade products on the shelf, to be advised businesses. We have licensing agreements with retailers, and we communicate to consumers to convince them of the value of fair trade. To buy more fair trade, and also there's advocacy and dialogue with governments and civil society. But in the core, in the middle, you have the fair trade standards, and these are key for the whole system. That means that every product in the market, wherever in the world, that uses the label fair trade, that means that all actors that are in supply chain before having that final product, all actors should comply with the fair trade standards. For producers, you have two standards. You have the standards for the cooperatives, because 80% of our producers are united and have to be united in cooperatives. That's in our standard mentioned. And 20% for some products, we also allow plantations. That's, for example, for bananas and for flowers. So the first standards are for producers and hired labor, we call it. These are for workers that work in these plantations. And then we have standards for all the other actors in the supply chain. We call it trader standard. And these standards are key in what we are doing, because we guarantee that a product with a fair trade label on its packaging, that everything is compliant with our standards, with our law. And that, of course, needs to be controlled. And think at the bottom, you see that FlowCert independently controls that every actor in the supply chain works in compliance with standards. So this is a really key slide to understand and to understand our system. And there's only one reason of existence for fair trade, for what we are doing in Belgium, for example, that's to have impact for the farmers. And I want to share with you this slide, because this slide shows where are most farmers or cooperatives situated. And you see they're all over in the world. And to start with Latin America, there's quite some cooperatives in countries as Colombia, but also Dominican Republic, coffee and for cocoa and bananas, I mean. In Peru, there's quite some cooperatives. In Africa, you see that it's also spread around in Africa. In Kenya, you have lots of cooperatives that are working on flowers and on coffee and tea. In Cote d'Ivoire, it's very densely populated with cooperatives on cocoa. And in Asia and Pacific, it goes from Iran until Papua New Guinea. And we have many cooperatives in India, for example, working on spices and tea. But to come back to the SDGs, to the Sustainable Development Goals. So first of all, to start, I have selected some SDGs. I couldn't talk about all SDGs. We don't have time for this, but I selected some SDGs to which I think Fairtrade very strongly connects to. Even when you compare Fairtrade with other sustainability schemes, I think in comparison to the other schemes, we are really working even more strongly on these SDGs than everybody else. So that's why I selected, for example, SDG number 1, no poverty. And this one is central to our Fairtrade mission. We want to ensure a decent living for farmers, workers, and their families. And how do we do that? There's several ways to work on that, but one key way to work on no poverty for us, and that's where we are very unique in, it's our Fairtrade minimum price. We have minimum price that protects the farmers for very low market prices, and that at least covers the cost of sustainable production. And let's show you a little slide on coffee, on Arabica coffee. This is the slide that's the graph. The graph shows the coffee prices the last 30 years. In black, you see the world market price. In blue, you see our minimum price, but also the premium is included. And in green, you see our organic prices, guaranteed prices. And you see that most of the time, our minimum price and premium were really of high added value for the farmers, because if you would look at the surface between the blue line and the black line over the last 30 years, you see that Fairtrade certified coffee farmers could take profit a lot of our guaranteed prices. And why is this important? Does that relate to poverty? You see that in 30 years, when you look at the world market price, I think we can say that maybe in the first decade it was slightly below the $1. Maybe now it's slightly, on average, the trend is on average be slightly above $1, but still $1. Still it fluctuates around $1 over 30 years. And if you take into account that the cost of inputs, fertilizers, of transport costs, for example, in the meantime, I think they have tripled or quadrupled even, or even more. So that means in real terms, they earn less than in the beginning. Of course, you can say also their productivity may have gone up, but we can be sure that if first on market prices, that their situation is becoming worse. And that's also what our CEO Dario was mentioning in the video. That makes people leaving the farm, young people, and going to the city and stopping farming. In addition to the minimum price, there is Fairtrade premium, and this is the fuel for farms to invest in their farm, to invest in the cooperatives. We recommend that at least 25% of their premium, they invested in machinery, they invested in quality. Also part of the premium usually goes as cash to the farmers, and also part of it goes to the communities itself in terms of school buildings, for example, or in terms of medical services. In addition to that, in our standards, we make sure that in a cooperative that there is no discrimination, so that the distribution of benefits, for example, of the premium, are equally distributed to all farmers. We very much insist in the democratic working of a cooperative. All farmers should equally be able to vote to, for example, what and how the Fairtrade premium will be invested. Last but not least, decent incomes. No poverty is about decent income. And I will come back to it later in this presentation. A living income for farmers or living wage for workers is crucial in our strategy, is crucial as objective in what we are doing. Yeah, this is another slide to explain you a bit the difference between minimum price and premium on coffee for the last 2 years. So in pink here you have the world market price, in blue the minimum price. So the minimum price the last 2 years was almost the entire time valid. And then you have 20 cents of premium, which they premium per pound of coffee, which they receive on top of the minimum price. And then, and that's also important, there's also strong incentive to produce organic crops. And here in coffee, it's 30 cents additional price difference for organic that we give fixed to the farmers. This is a slide on that links the minimum price to the situation in cocoa. In 2019, I think in 1st of October, we increased our Fairtrade minimum price for cocoa from $2,000 to $2,400 per ton, and that had an impact because starting with the diagrams on the left, you see the 3 diagrams on the left, and you see horizontal, you see the poverty lines as defined by the World Bank. And you see that before they had the regulated farm gate price in Ivory Coast, that means that most of the farmers didn't hardly even reach the extreme poverty line. Then, because of that, we needed to increase our minimum Fairtrade minimum price to $2,400 per ton. That means that farmers, at least all of them, had earned an were above the extreme poverty line, even independent from the productivity level. But still, they were not they didn't reach, most of them, the poverty line. That's why we very much welcomed the new initiative by the governments in Ivory Coast and Ghana, where they pay on top of the market prices $400 per ton additional. And because of that, quite some farmers at least reach the poverty line. But where we want to go to, and that's the reason I put these slides, we have as objective that all farmers should earn a living income. So that's still a bit ahead, actually. That's why we are working on, and that's why we believe that at the end, we as industry in Belgium, we should pay a living income reference price, so that taking into account a reasonable productivity, that farmers reach a living income. The second SDG is zero hunger. This is also important because this is about producing enough food in the world so that everybody can be fed, that the entire population of our planet can have food. And that's why we also work pretty much on productivity. As said before, we recommend that 25% at least of what they earn as Fairtrade premium is invested in their farms to increase productivity. The producer networks are very close, working together with cooperatives in order to learn the cooperatives, the farmers, good agriculture practices. And third aspect is diversification. That's also key in our living income framework. That's one of the 4 factors of our living income framework. We believe that farmers should diversify, and that will be means to progress. So I already spoke about our producer networks. We have 3 producer networks that are supporting cooperatives and the Fairtrade certified organizations. In Asia, you have the NAP. Asia Pacific, you have the NAP. In Africa, you have Fairtrade Africa. And in Latin America, Caribbean, you have the CLAC. We call it the CLAC. And to go further with the CLAC, there are, I think, almost 100 people, 100 employees working all over South and Central America, and working to improve productivity within the farmers. And one illustrative program is the Productivity Improvement Program by CLAC, by Fairtrade Latin America. And this is actually a program that started in 2015 and that directly supported almost 30 cooperatives in 7 countries, so that more than 700 households were reached, and with as objective actually to improve productivity and quality. And the focus here was on soil health, on fertility, because the issue is that many banana farmers actually made an excessive used excessively agrochemicals, and that deteriorated the quality of the soil. And the productivity improvement program by the CLAC really aimed at increasing their production following organic production schemes. That means that they produce their fertilizers in an organic way themselves, and same for pesticides. And this increased the vigor of the plants and also yields. And in addition, also the cost of agrochemicals, went down, and also the use of agrochemicals went down, with a very good effect and impact on biodiversity. And there, in the monitoring, so we did an evaluation of the program, and we saw that for 4 countries, and actually this also happened to be the 4 countries of origin for Fairtrade bananas in Belgium, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Dominican Republic, that on average, the yield increased with more than 30% from 2017 to 2019. And that also led to more than $6,000 per hectare additional revenues, which is significant. The next SDG where Fairtrade has a strong focus on is gender equality. Fairtrade wants to increase the participation and empower women to participate in agriculture, because I think in the world, women maybe more than 50, I even read 60 to 80% of agriculture output is done by women, but they hardly own land. They don't have any rights. So it's important to make sure that women are empowered. Women are empowered. And how do we do this? So first of all, in our standards, there's strict requirements for producer organizations. There shouldn't be any discrimination based on gender. There is zero tolerance in terms of sexual intimidation, etc. For plantations, we also have work conditions such as maternity leaves of, I think, 2 months. And also, it is in our standards a requirement that cooperatives and plantations should develop a gender policy over time. So it should be included in the plan. And beyond standards, we have our very known women's schools of leadership. There was one in Guatemala a few years ago, and in 2017, the Women's School of Leadership in Ivory Coast started. And the coming slides, I will give you a bit more context related to that. But also, we do a lot of advocacy work together with governments, trade unions on women, on gender. And yeah, part of the premium, we noticed that part of the premium is also invested in projects, in women projects, which we very much welcome. So, Women's Schools of Leadership, we started the Women's School of Leadership in Côte d'Ivoire in 2017 to enhance their leadership skills and also to improve their livelihoods. Why did we choose Ivory Coast? They're very low in the gender inequality index, and there's a high level of discrimination in terms of owning land. I think not even, I can't remember the percentage, but it was lower than 30% of women, at 25% of women only own land. That means that it's very likely that they don't have any power or membership in the cooperatives, most women. It's also harder for women that own land to have access to credits, to agriculture inputs. So there's a lot of work to do in Côte d'Ivoire on gender. So it started in 2017, and we had the second cycle in 2019, and now the third cycle is started in 2021, with, I think this time, about 140 participants from 14 selected cooperatives. So the achievements of the second cycle of the Women's School of Leadership, so 40 people graduated, 32 women, and also 8 men. So why men did also participate is we think that it's important to have also allies, men that are allies with our gender policy, with gender equality, and that communicate about this within their own community. So 40 graduates from 7 cooperatives, and they had trainings in 10 modules. So these were modules about leadership, about negotiation, but also about self-esteem, which is also very important in this program. And So another achievement is that so beyond the training sessions, the women also need to deliver training sessions to their communities. And another, I think more than 2,000 people were reached in these communities. They also established 7 women's associations as part of the program. One woman association, for example, used their own grown food to start a school canteen. And in addition to this women association, there was also 7 income generating projects that were launched within the program. And important to say is that 70% of these projects were financed by the project itself, and 30% additionally by the cooperative contributing to that. One example here is I think one cooperative started, the women of a group of women in one cooperative started to breed chicken. So to have financial means by the eggs and also by the meat. Here's some pictures on the left above. You see the graduation of the 2nd cycle, and you see some other pictures during class. So we also welcome our partners in Belgium to collaborate with the Women's School of Leadership. And one example is Fairbel, that for its chocolate milk is cocoa certified, and that decided to contribute, if I'm not mistaken, 1 cent per liter of chocolate milk to the Women's School of Leadership. And so if you would be interested to contribute or to work together on the Women's School of Leadership, we, just as we did for Fairbel, we organized a joint press release, and we are very happy to put that in the picture. SDG 8, decent work. That's also essential in what we are doing. Decent, that means decent prices for crops, but also safe, secure, and fairly paid jobs. We promote better working conditions. That means that, for example, in textile, there's this mandatory protective clothing that should be worn following our standards. It's also about gender equality, for example, as we spoke before. But it's also, we also support workers in banana or flower plantations to negotiate better pay and conditions themselves. Because they should have the freedom to form an association and to collectively negotiate better working conditions. And as you all have heard already, living income is really a key element of our strategy. And we started setting living wage benchmarks also as concrete steps toward decent income. First of all, there's many more examples, but I chose 4 topics on that. Child labor, forced labor. We strongly prohibit child and forced labor in our standards, and we also have this collaborative approach together with communities, young people, to tackle these root causes in a collaborative way with them. So to go further with living income, what is living income? Living income is having enough income to at least cover a nutritious low cost diet, to have decent housing, but also other essential expenses to be able to pay other essential expenses such as education, healthcare, transport, and also to have a provision for unexpected events such as climate catastrophes. So that together is living income. And there is a living income community of practices that is gathering different NGOs like Fairtrade, but also Rainforest, I believe, and ICEAL and other NGOs, and that together will define what the living income is, and that's of course dependent per country. And so how can living income be earned? By the income of the fair trade crop, but there's also other crops, there's livestock, there's also vegetables and fruits that they consume themselves. So that should also be, the value of that should also be taken into account. And there's of course also the income if they go working in a factory, that should also be taken into account. So in our framework, in our fair trade living income framework for cocoa, there's 4 key elements. The first one is about having strong producer organizations. We believe that it is key, it is a fundament to have strong, empowered producer organizations, to have good governance. So organizational strengthening is one of the 4 elements in our living income framework. The second one is about increasing the productivity, it's about diversifying crops, it's about good agricultural practices, so you can call it farm management. The third one is so more sales, more fair trade sales at better prices, so at the living income reference price. That's why we are working on. That's where we are working on in all the countries, in Belgium and in our neighboring countries, to convince partners to start living income projects and to pay the living income reference price. And third of all is advocacy, is an enabling environment. So just as in Belgium, we worked on Beyond Chocolate. We also work in other countries with governments, with civil society, in order to have this recognition that living income is a human right. And yeah, to come back to Beyond Chocolate in Belgium, 2018, at the end of 2018, all companies and organizations that had anything to do or have anything to do with chocolate signed this Beyond Chocolate Charter. And there's 2 important commitments. By 2025, 100% of Belgian chocolate must be certified. And by 2030, so all farmers that are delivering cocoa for the Belgian chocolates, for the chocolate produced in Belgium, so that's more or less 300,000 farmers estimated, should earn a living income. And also there shouldn't be any deforestation linked with cocoa production. So, and to work on this, so one of the elements, as said before, is living income reference price, which we have determined for Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, because as you know, 2/3 of cocoa in the world comes from is produced in these 2 countries. And how is this living income reference price calculated? So it's the cost of decent living. So again, these are nutritious diet, decent housing, and the other expenses. So the cost of decent living plus the cost of what is the cost of sustainable production? How much does it cost to produce 1 ton of cocoa? And you should divide that by the viable farm size and by sustainable yield. So here we speak about a yield that should be reasonable to achieve within mid-long term, and which should be reasonable for all cooperatives to achieve. And the viable farm size is about, we think that a farm shouldn't be too small. Should, for example, for a farm of 1 hectare, it will always be difficult for a farm of 1 hectare to reach a living income, because in 1 hectare you cannot have enough output to reach that living income if you only live from that surface. So all in all, making the calculation, we fixed the living income reference price, and that's agreed also with market. We fixed this at $2,200 per ton for Côte d'Ivoire and $2,100 per ton for Ghana. And looking at the current world market prices and the additional differential that the government is guaranteeing in both countries, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, since the end of last year, there is a gap of $400 per ton for Côte d'Ivoire to still be paid on top of what they earn as such. And there's a gap of almost $300 per ton, so for this campaign in Ghana. So that may sound significant, $400 per ton and $300 per ton, and that's significant. But if you would calculate this back to a tablet of chocolate of 200 grams, this hardly represents on average 5 cents per tablet. So it is not that much. So why wouldn't it be possible to really go further and then to guarantee a living income reference price for the farmers? So it's also thanks to Beyond Chocolate, and we feel that it is moving a lot in Belgium. We have already quite some pilot projects, quite some projects on living income by Oxfam, Belvas, Galère. Little way to go. That was also initiated in Belgium by Lidl, and we're very happy to see that after Belgium and Netherlands, it started to spread around all over the world. So Lidl introduced Way to Go. It's Way to Go tablets all over the world now. Internationally, we all know Tony's Tony Chocolonely as a living income chocolate. And yeah, Ben & Jerry's at the end of last year, they also announced that their chocolate ice cream, the cocoa and the chocolate ice cream, all farmers, and that's more or less 5,000 farmers involved in that, in the production of this cocoa, will earn more money, will go up to living income for the production of this cocoa. And in addition, I think last week, the CEO of Unilever, Alain Job, I think, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, I think Alain Job, he announced a living income commitment, saying that all suppliers that directly supply goods and services to Unilever, to all of the divisions of Unilever, that they should all earn a living income by 2030. So we very much applaud this kind of commitments, and I think that we all have this duty, all together we have this duty to go and to work up to a living income for our farmers. In Belgium, there's also in 2021 two additional Belgian retailers that will announce their projects on living income. So very happy that there's a lot of movement on this. So apart from living income, there's also living wage. And the difference is that living wage is for workers that work in plantations. And our ambition is that workers, they have the power to improve their own livelihoods, and they can negotiate their wages and terms of work. And there's already in our standards a few principles underlying this. So the premium, Fairtrade premium management is done by a premium committee. So this is a committee by workers representatives. They have the freedom of association. So all workers should have the right to join a union or to join an association in order to collectively negotiate their working conditions. And also in the standard, it is written that working conditions are equitable for all farmers. They should, for example, their salaries should be higher than regional average, or at least the minimum wage. So for bananas, more concretely, also in December last year, we announced our new standard for bananas. So for banana plantations, that so as of July 2021, it is compulsory for all workers, for all plantations to pay the workers at least 70% of living wage. That's the base wage. They should all earn 70% of living wage. And the employer should negotiate an agreement with the trade unions or workers' committees to bridge the living wage gap. So they should fix a timing by when the gap will be covered. And in order to already give the workers already their living wage, we also have this temporary measure that up to 50% of the premium can be distributed as cash for the workers. We will annually monitor this progress to see how much how important the steps are taken to evolve to a living wage. So why all these discussions on living income, on living wage? Because it's a universal human right. Anyone should have the right to have a favorable and a just remuneration, and this is key in what Fairtrade is doing. I see that we're already 40 minutes ahead, so I will go maybe a little bit faster. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. So we bring together millions of consumers and certified farmers. It's a global movement. It's not only a label, Fairtrade. And Fairtrade or mark means that so that production is done in a sustainable way. For example, farmers should use environmentally friendly farming methods. Also, very important is that our standards, they cover an important part of the human rights, because you will hear more about human rights due diligence legislation, which is already in place for large companies in France. And there's also discussions in several other countries on European level to make it compulsory, mandatory for big companies to have a human rights due diligence. And we have an excellent center on human rights due diligence, and we will be happy to be in the future partner, an advising partner to work on this together. And also, yeah, responsible production means also we believe in organic farming, and we offer and we incentivize farmers to go to organic. Climate action. Here it's important to mention the Fairtrade carbon credits. So this can be a win-win for farmer and businesses. Farmers can invest in projects such as trees planting, biogas installations, environment-friendly foodstuffs, and they can earn credits. So they can earn credits, which are the Fairtrade carbon credits, and this is we work together with golden carbon credits, and so we can so the farmers can earn money because of they can sell these credits, and then on the other hand, businesses, if they want to reduce or compensate the carbon impact, they can buy this Fairtrade carbon credits. And there is a Fairtrade climate standard which describes the rules, and also there's also minimum price and premium involved with this Fairtrade carbon credit. So if you want to reduce your carbon impact, you should know that we have this Fairtrade climate standard and we have this Fairtrade carbon credits, and this could be interesting for you to reduce your impacts in such a way. And also in our standards, there's a lot about biodiversity protection. Of course, there shouldn't be any deforestation, and we also, for example, prohibit dangerous pesticides in our standards. Peace, justice, and strong institutions. It's mainly the strong institutions here that for us, for Fairtrade, are essential. It's strong institutions as a Fairtrade international organization. That's why we also have this unique governance that 50% of Fairtrade International is owned by farmers, but also strong institutions at the cooperative level. All farmers should democratically be able to decide on how to proceed as a cooperative. And also, we have this, we want cooperatives to progress, to adopt this entrepreneurial skills. And also our producer organizations are there to support the cooperatives to understand market conditions so that they have also this connection with the market. Partnerships, so we already explained that in Beyond Chocolate, Fairtrade has this active role, has this initiating role, but we also work together with on European level, Fairtrade Advocacy Office, with governments, etc. And yeah, so we spoke. I gave you some examples on where we are strongly connected with the SDGs, but also we are happy to show you that we can also demonstrate. We can quantify how Fairtrade contributes to these SDGs. We have this dashboard, and here you see a print screen of this dashboard, and this gathers all information from the entire supply chain, and this quantifies, for example, here the impact of how the premium is allocated to the different SDGs. And here it's about flower plantations in Kenya. You see, for example, on the pie that 38% or 39% goes to quality education, and we can go more in detail. And we saw that in that 31 organizations, flower plantations in Kenya, or 1 million workers, that they used almost $1 million, so almost 1/3 of the premium they used in scholarships and bursary for the children to go to school. Another example is here, the investments of the Fairtrade premium in coffee cooperatives in Rwanda in 2018-19. And here we speak about 6,000 farmers from 8 cooperatives, and they had almost they had approximately 260,000 euro premium. And 60% of this premium was invested in the second SDG, the Zero Hunger, mostly by investing in processing facilities like fermentation tanks. But also 20% went to SDG number 1, no poverty, through direct payments of the premium to farmers. And 10%, another example is 10% went to SDG number 11, being sustainable cities. And that's thanks to the investment in roads mainly. So the conclusion of this of this presentation. Again, there was no time to explain everything in depth, and you're also very broad public, so I try to remain globally. But the conclusion is that thanks to your Fairtrade certified products, you already significantly cover a wide range of SDGs, mainly thanks to the unique social and environmental Fairtrade standards, but also thanks to the Fairtrade presence locally to support farmers, to, for example, increase productivity, to adopt good agriculture practices. But you can go beyond, and can go beyond the certification, and you can deepen your impact thanks to tailor-made projects. So that can be on living income, on living wage, that can be on gender equality, on carbon credit compensation, child protection, but also on human rights due diligence. So there's many ways to work together, and we are there to support you all along this journey. Let me still introduce you very shortly our team. So we have, if you're considering to work with Fairtrade, you're not certified yet. We have our business development team, Barbara, Cecile, Maiti, and Patty, below to help you out and to explain you the advantages of Fairtrade, to work together in offering Fairtrade products. And then we have our licensing certification team, Danka and Lisa, who can help you with more operational side of things. And you can go further once you're certified. So most of you are already certified, you can go further. And that's about this deepening impact. That's about this tailor-made projects. And I'm very happy to work together with you on that. And also Deborah, our B2B expert, will be happy to share stories with the consumers, with people, with the community. And here, so later on, you will receive the PowerPoint, and you have all contacts. It's also on our website, but you can find the contacts here in this PowerPoint too. Voila, that's about it. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have a bit more, and it's Barbara for questions.
Yes, thank you, Stijn. Yes, we received a few questions. The first one was about the Women's School of Leadership, and it was, could you explain more again the rationale why so many men need to participate in the Women's School of Leadership? I already gave a short answer in the chat box, but maybe you can elaborate.
First of all, so many men. In the example I gave, there was 20, I think 8 men out of 40. I'm not sure how many men will participate in this cycle, but it's a minor part. It's usually it's between 10 and 20%, and that's because they need to be advocates. If you only educate women in leadership skills, also explaining the finances, explaining all other matters, I think that will remain within the female farmers. And I think it's really important to have a buy-in also within men of cooperatives. So the purpose of these are men that are interested in the subject and that want to be advocates for more female participation. So they are our advocates, let's say, the advocates within their cooperatives communities to support this enhanced female participation.
And then another question, well, there were 2 questions related to the same topic. It's about milk. Isn't it contradictory promoting chocolate cow milk, considering that cow farming is one of the leading causes for climate change, as it requires a lot of resource and land while not being very efficient in terms of feeding people? I already gave also a written answer saying that we totally agree with that, but it's a bit out of our scope in Fairtrade, and that's towards the consumers to change their consumer habits and choose more local, organic, fair trade food, and of course less meat. But if you want to elaborate.
Yeah. I just want to complete, you're fully right in your answer, and I want to add on that again, what we are doing is having as much as possible impact for the cocoa farmers. Yeah, thanks to this chocolate milk, at least more cocoa farmers were able to sell more on fair trade terms. And of course, indeed, a discussion in which product is more sustainable than which other product. That's a bit out of our scope and out of our hands. But yeah, I agree with what you were saying before, by the way.
And then we have two more questions. The first one is, how can consumer see which products reach a level of living income for the farmers?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So it is important to say that we developed that living income framework. And that's also thanks to the pilot projects that we will monitor if most projects that are starting actually as in the beginning, there's no living income reach for the farmers. It is a way up to living income, so it is a journey. And the purpose is to monitor the progress of the farmers, the earnings of the farmers, and to hopefully achieve living income within a few years, because also productivity should go up, etc. All the other factors they should also work on. And then it's about communicating living income. So it is too early now we don't have a standard saying, okay, that's living income, that's not, because it's a way to living income, and it's and we will communicate transparently together with our partners this way up to living income. And the purpose is to monitor the progress.
And then the other question, what is the difference between the minimum wage and the living wage, or is it the same?
So it's the same. It's not the same, sorry. So for bananas, so we introduced this base wage or minimum wage, which should be 70% of living wage. That means, for example, in the Dominican Republic, the minimum wage, as calculated by this living wage coalition, is $330 per month. So that means that within the context of our new standard of bananas, as of July, all the workers in plantations in Dominican Republic, they should earn 70% of this $330 per month, and that's then the base wage. We call it base wage. That's what they should earn minimally. And we hope that thanks to the Fairtrade premium and thanks to negotiations with their employer, that in a few years they will reach living wage. So base wage is a percentage of living wage, but it's not enough to cover all these aspects like decent housing, nutritious food, etc.
Okay, and at this moment we don't have any other questions. I don't know if someone else wants to ask one more question. And if not, we will then finish 5 minutes earlier, which is also good.
Okay, and if you have questions, you're also free to contact, you have our contacts on the PowerPoint, or you will receive our contacts, so feel free to contact us. We are very motivated to work together.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for your participation. And as you know, there are 2 more sessions next week, Tuesday on communication and Thursday on certification and licensing tools. So don't hesitate to register and to share that to your network for people who would be interested too.
Thanks a lot and have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.